Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 182, and we're going to talk about freedom, which is offensive. So, on my Facebook memories from 9 years ago, I used to send an email to all my prospective new students for the new semester. And what I used to do when I first began to teach was that I would, before I didn't send an intro email to prospective students before the semester started. What I did was I would walk into my class and not say a word, just silently hand out my syllabus and then, not smile, don't make any eye contact at all. And then I would read through the syllabus and I would just basically go through the requirements of the class, and then I would basically dismiss the class. And generally, what would happen is that I would scare so many students, uh, that first impression, they would get so afraid of me that they would drop the class. And so I could generally get 8 students out of 30 to drop the class because they were just so scared of me. But then I realized that 8 more students would take their place and they wouldn't be intimidated at all. And so they would, and I couldn't do it again because, of course, on the second day, I would start cracking jokes because I learned the hard way that you can't project kindness to your students on the first day because then they'll just walk all over you. So what I started to do was then be very forthright, just tell students even before registration period was over what they're getting into. And part of the reason why I did that was my wait list on for these classes were so long. I had so many students who were trying to get into my sections that I didn't want to get stuck with students who didn't want to learn. And I wanted to create space for students who I knew really wanted to learn and hear something different. In other words, I wanted the students who were only going to talk about the same old, white people are racist kind of, uh, those kinds of thinking. And I wanted different students who were willing to learn something different, maybe even learn that their thoughts, their beliefs were problematic and maybe look for something better. So I sent an email that was so brutally honest about myself that I would try to get students who, certain types of students, to drop my class. And the logic behind that was I'm never going to convince those students who would drop my class because of what I said in my intro. But it also would cut down on the complaints that I would receive from students during and after the semester. In other words, I would get on average a little over one grievance filed against me per year, per academic year, which is a little bit higher than average, I was told. I mean, it was so bad that I actually signed up and volunteered to be part of the grievance committee in our department so that if a student was complaining about me, I would get a heads up, right? I would know that someone complained about me and I was going to have to prepare myself to defend myself, right? But that didn't work because if it was a serious grievance, they wouldn't talk to me at all. And the grievance system was weird, but I won't get into it. So I would try to get the students who were more likely to complain to drop the class, to create space for the students who told me they were trying to get in my class and they were eager to learn the stuff that I was saying because they heard from their friends that it was a great class. And so I tried to get students to drop to create space for more eager to learn students, which eager to learn students are awesome to have in your class. They participate, you do all the work, and you get great discussion. Okay, so what did I put in that intro email, which eventually became a video, which eventually got me fired because someone complained about, right? So before they would just drop, but more as time went on, students got more entitled. And instead of just dropping the class quietly and finding another, you know, uh, professor that would just say the same old, they complained, right? And so the wrong people heard the complaint, and the first chance they got, they did not renew my contract. But I've said this before. Anyway, so what was in the email slash video? I would just basically say there are two rules that everyone has to abide by. If you stay in this class, there are two rules that I want you to obey. um, I wrote, today's social and political climate have reached an unhealthy pitch of intolerance. Trump haters are haters like Obama haters. And it's as if people look for a fight to do violence. This class will not fan the flames of anger and violence. To achieve this goal, there are two rules for this class: no coercion, no hypocrisy. And that's the tagline. That's what I always begin every episode by saying. So not only do I run my class that way, but I run the podcast that way. No coercion means that no one can talk over, bully, or attempt to force someone else to believe or do something they do not want to. Everyone is free to believe and do whatever they want to do, but they may not force others to agree with them. If you want people to agree with you, you must persuade them with a logical, articulate argument. Pithy slogans don't count, right? Cliches. I mean, just think cliche, right? This rule also applies to the instructor, me, which brings up the second rule. The second rule is no hypocrisy. This means that any idea, rule, or proposal must be applied to all, not just a subsection of society. This includes the government, of course. There will not be two sets of rules, one for some and another for the rest. If you want freedom to talk, everyone has the same freedom. So, just as I cannot use guilt, intimidation, authority, or your grades to force you to believe in something you don't want to believe, you cannot force me to agree with you. The door swings both ways for everyone. By observing these rules, I hope to have a great and meaningful semester with you. Some students might be offended, but many more have informed me that the content is pretty eye-opening. And then I say, I'm also a Jesus freak and an anarcho capitalist, which means I love individual choice and freedom. If you don't like freedom with responsibility for everyone, don't take this class. Okay. So uh, this means that I believe no one can tell a person how they should live their lives, especially not through the government and through the force of law. It means that each person should be allowed to pursue the future they desire. If everyone is allowed to pursue their dreams while accepting responsibility for the consequences of those pursuits, then most people will be happy most of the time. So that's what I would send out, in an earlier version of that. I would put into an email before I made videos. I would send it in an email to try in an attempt to get some of the more leftist, close-minded. They want to stand on their soapbox through the entire class, yelling and screaming at everybody else, including me. I try to get those people to drop. And just so you know, I've had a lot of students who stayed in the class who were extremely in extreme disagreement with everything that I said. But we had the most fantastic conversations and discussions. And so that's cool, right? As long as someone was open minded enough to have a conversation instead of shouting everyone else down, talking over everybody else, not allowing anyone else to talk, this kind of thing, to the point where they're going to lodge a complaint slash a grievance against me. So anyway, one semester I sent this 9 years ago. I got an email from a student. I don't remember who it was, but it was 9 years ago. And I only know because it popped up on my Facebook memories, and it said that the student was looking forward to being offended, which was hilarious, right? And so we had a good conversation. Well, I remember that once the semester started, that we had a laugh about that. Uh, but a student like that basically is saying, I want to learn something different. I want to be challenged. I want to be able to think independently and defend myself, right? And so it was a very positive email, right? Obviously, if someone was going to be offended and be angry, they wouldn't write that email in that way. And so also they were getting offended anyway, right? So the other classes that they would take, so it would be a race. I taught race theory at the university, and any other race class that they would take, it was all check your privilege. White people are racist, all this other kind of stuff, which were basically lines which stifle conversation, which kill discussion. And so you were getting offended anyway. So why not get offended in a different way, which might lead to something better? And so, therefore, I say students today pay to get offended. So most students pay tuition to learn how they themselves are hateful racists, deserving of violence. And other students learn how to hate those racists, learning what to say and how to re educate them, right? So I would teach people how to rise above this sort of destructive behavior to find something else, to have different attitudes, to have different perspectives, to have different understanding, to be able to see the way out of this sort of destructive cycle of ever increasing hate. Keep in mind, it would also mean you'd have to break some of your own beliefs. You'd have to sort of break through that limiting belief that you were holding on to for comfort. What do I mean by that? I had a student, and we were talking about how bad I was talking about, just how evil the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, was, and how they prevent people from access to medicine that would make them better. In fact, more people have died because of the FDA than were probably saved as a result. And so I got this one student. She raised her hand. She was angry, near tears, I got to say. And she said that her friend died of cancer. And how dare me, how dare you say that the FDA, you know, might have contributed to her death. And I said, well, it's kind of true. And she said that there was an experimental cancer drug that she wasn't allowed to take, right? And so this was before right to try, right? So there's an promising experimental disease. You're going to die in 6 months anyway. So why not take a shot to try to extend your life by taking an experimental drug? And so the right to try thing that we're seeing now means that if you die because after taking that drug, it does not affect the actual drug trial, right? And so the drug trial can continue, and your death would not adversely affect the results of that study. And so she said, my friend sacrificed herself so that other people will have the benefit of cancer fighting drugs. And I went into how there are drug testing systems that don't take 10 billion or $4 billion in 10 years, which is the average for FDA drug approval a few years ago, 9 years ago, anyway, at least. And so basically, you can have more testing done for free in 2 weeks and she just was lost it. She, because she was angry that perhaps maybe her friend did not have to die, that there was a chance that she didn't have to die. In other words, she comforted herself. She was able to, you know, manage the grief by saying that her death meant something because it might save someone in the future. And the idea that the FDA actually is slowing down search for cure research, slowing down the approval of drugs so that certain people can make more money, it was a lot for her to handle. But I like to think that after a short period of time, she began to see that. And I saw her defending some of my ideas later on in the semester. And I thought that meant she never said anything to me, but because she started actually defending some of the things that I was saying against some of her classmates, that she began to understand that her anger and her grief towards me was misplaced, that it should be directed, excuse me, against the government and all the bureaucracies they have set up, which lowers our standard of living, which increases the amount of difficulties that we have in our life. And so she began to realize that her being offended was the pathway to learning better ideas, that there was more hope than she possibly could have imagined. And life could be better if we got rid of all of these bureaucracies that were slowing down research and just cures for a lot of diseases that we suffer through today. So, tolerance in the face of being offended for the better idea, and too few students are even aware that that is even a possibility, and that is such a shame. I gotta say that I do miss teaching at the university level, to be able to challenge students on a much higher level. Like, I'm not dealing with, kids fighting each other, bullying each other, or you know, inappropriately touching each other, saying mean things to each other and crying at recess. Uh, it it can get it's different. The level of conversation is much different. And so, yeah, there are those times I miss that aha moment that you see students experience when they realize that everything that they've been taught is just simply subjective, that they always had a choice to pursue another line of thinking that might have led to better ideas. So, yeah, I miss that, but it is what it is, right? And so, even though I am in this situation, I do get to enjoy conversation with my colleagues. I do get to look forward to things like the Ron Paul Institute conference, the Liberty platform this weekend. But anyway, I'm going to be there and I'm going to have a good time learning about freedom from a panel of, or a whole slew of speakers. And I'm looking forward to it. So I hope you guys have a great holiday weekend. I will probably put something together for Labor Day. Probably not as good as Peter Schiff's Labor Day episodes, but something nonetheless. So talk to you next time.